In the fall of 2003, a 13-year-old black boy walked alone into a livestock auction in Calhoun County, Alabama, and bought the cheapest, skinniest heifer in the ring, and every grown man in the barn laughed. What none of them knew was that the boy had been quietly studying their cattle for over a year, and what he'd written in his notebook was about to unravel something they'd all been doing wrong for a decade. The laughter started before he arrived. It was a Tuesday morning in September, and Roy Hatcher was already in his booth at Hollis's Diner, coffee going, the easy authority of a man who has owned the same ground long enough that the ground feels like a personality trait. He didn't lower his voice. "I hear the Elmore widow's boy is coming out to buy today. 13 years old, coming to the ring alone." He let it sit. "Lord help whatever animal he picks." The table laughed. The morning continued. 3 miles east, Darius Elmore was already at work. He moved through the pasture in cold gray light before breakfast, slowly, the way water moves when it has no reason to hurry. His father's hat sat on his head, a few sizes large, the brim worn soft along the front where James Elmore's thumb had rested 10,000 mornings before his. The boy walked with his eyes down, studying the ground the way a reader studies a page they're not sure they've understood yet. He was 13 years old. He had been running this farm alone for 14 months. The notebook rode in his back pocket, worn to the shape of him. He pulled it out and crouched at the fence line, pressing his palm flat into the soil, noting moisture, temperature, the feel of things before his mind had words for it. He wrote the date. He wrote what he felt. He noted which cows had been grazing this section and for how long. He did this the way his father had taught him. Both hands slow, no part of it rushed. A man who can't name what he's looking at, his father used to say, has no business deciding what to do about it. James Elmore had been a man who named things, who kept records. Darius had gone through his father's notebooks in the weeks after the funeral and found, across 12 years of documentation, the same recurring note with question marks, calves light again. Why? No answer. Life had moved on. Darius had not moved on from the question marks. He'd been looking at them for 11 months, and he had a theory. The county ran a shared bull, a large Angus cross cycling through small operations in the eastern part of Calhoun County for going on 9 years. Men respected him. His calves looked healthy at auction. But the weaning weights hadn't moved in a decade. Not 1 pound of average improvement across the county's small operations. Some of the cows being bred were daughters of that bull. Some were granddaughters. He didn't know the word for what he suspected yet. He wrote it in April, in careful cursive. The bull is too old and the calves look too much like each other. I think we need new blood, but I don't know how to get it. He was 12 when he wrote that. He was going to the sale to find the new blood. 2 men settled into the row in front of him at the auction barn. He recognized them, Hatcher and Gene Sims, who had been a friend of his father's in the easy, acknowledging way of men who wave on county roads but have never shared a meal. They didn't look back at him. They talked the way men talk about weather in front of furniture, not directing it at anything, not worried about whether anything hears. She ought to sell, Sims said. That hill ground won't carry a commercial operation. Keeping them alive isn't the same as doing anything with them, Hatcher said. Darius wrote it down, R. Hatcher. G. Sims. They've already decided. Fine. Let them decide. The cheapest heifer in the sale came through at 2 in the afternoon, 14 months old, ribby, her coat dull from dry pasture. But she moved well. Correct hip angle. Good bone underneath the thin condition. She was from Calhoun County, the dispersal sale of a dead man's estate. She was unrelated to anything in the eastern end of Calhoun County. She sold for $230. Darius bought her. He named her Odie, after the man whose estate had let her go. That evening his mother Elaine sat across the kitchen table and looked at the notebook. You know what people are saying, she said. Yes, ma'am. What are you going to say back? Nothing yet, he said. When the calves are big enough to speak for themselves. What this boy did next, with a worn notebook, a $2 stamp, and one letter to a college professor, is the kind of thing that doesn't make the news, but it's exactly the kind of thing that changes what a family owns for generations. If you've ever been the person in the room everyone already decided couldn't figure it out, stay with this. Hit subscribe, because what happens next is something no one in that county ever expected to have to explain. He started at the kitchen table, the way all real work starts, not in the field, but under the light. 22 extension bulletins spread across the surface, margins dense with penciled questions, pages soft from handling. The one that mattered most was authored by Dr. Patricia Alds at Auburn University's Department of Animal Sciences. She had written about inbreeding depression, the measurable decline that accumulates when a closed population breeds on itself too long. About heterosis, the genetic benefit when you cross lines that have grown apart. About EPD tables, numbers that quantify what a sire would contribute in offspring weight and growth. He had read those pages 15 times. He had also understood, reading them alone at 14, that understanding something and being believed about it were two entirely different problems. He could be right about the county bull. But if he walked into Roy Hatcher's driveway and said, "I think your cows have been breeding too close for 9 years," the conversation would end before it started. He needed a letter. Someone the county couldn't dismiss as easily as it dismissed him. 9 drafts over 4 evenings. He described his observations precisely. The 9-year stagnation, the shared sire system, the cows that were daughters and granddaughters of the same bull. He attached the data table. He did not mention his age. He checked the mailbox every afternoon for 6 weeks. The letter came on a Thursday in January. He read it standing at the mailbox in the cold, 3 pages in Dr. Alds's hand. "Dear Mr. Elmore, your observations are well grounded in the genetics of small closed populations, and your data shows exactly the pattern one would expect from accumulated inbreeding in a shared sire system." She had confirmed it. She explained the mechanism and gave him a path, one strategic outcross, a heifer from distant stock bred to a performance-tested AI sire, would produce calves with measurable hybrid vigor. The improvement would be visible at weaning. He folded the letter into the notebook and called the number on the letterhead. She asked specific questions for 40 minutes, cow weights, pasture direction, depth of cold in February, and he answered each one from the notebook. When he didn't know something, he said so. She worked around it without changing her tone. She told him, AI breeding, not a live sire. High weaning weight EPDs, moderate mature size. 30-day breeding season. Write down every cow that doesn't settle. Near the end she said, "You describe this problem more clearly in a letter than most producers twice your age describe it in person. Don't let anyone talk you out of your own observations." He hung up and stood in the hallway for a long time. He ordered 2 straws of a cemental bull with high-growth EPDs from a Kansas catalog. The woman on the phone walked him through the tables without once asking his age. He paid with a money order. He drove to the hardware store for mineral boluses and passed Merle Dobbs on the way out. "That heifer won't settle on AI," Dobbs said. "You need a live bull she can see and smell." "Thank you for the advice," Darius said and left. The extension agent, Tom Birdsell, appeared at the property in January while Darius was running body condition assessments on the herd. "Where'd you learn that?" Birdsell said, looking at the notebook. "The extension bulletins," Darius said. "Yours, mostly." Birdsell walked 50 yards of fence in silence. Then, "AI breeding is a management tool for large commercial operations. With a herd your size, you're spending money on inputs you won't recover in calf prices. Focus on getting through the season. Don't overreach." "Yes, sir," Darius said. He wrote it down. Birdsell said don't overreach. I wrote that down so I'd remember who said it. OD calved in late September, before dawn, and Darius was there because he had been sleeping in the barn for 3 nights running. 92 pounds. His county bull calves averaged 63. He weighed it 3 times. He wrote all 3 weights. At weaning, 8 months later, the cemental cross stood at 631 pounds. County average, 444. He sold privately to a stocker operation in Talladega at 43 cents per pound above sale barn price, and sat in the barn that evening without writing anything for a long time. Then, I was right about the problem. One calf doesn't prove it, but it also doesn't disprove it. I need 3 years of data. Keep going. The county kept waiting for him to fail. He kept not failing. His second crop of crossbred calves came through heavier than the first. Howard Cole, a thin, quiet man who sourced cattle for a natural beef program in Georgia, drove out to walk the pastures. He looked at the cattle the way people who understand cattle look at them, not at individual animals but at the pattern, the evenness, the evidence that what he was seeing was not luck. "Your calves match," Cole said. "Same sire selection every breeding. Same mineral program." Cole paid above market for the whole pen. He said he'd be back. Darius felt, for the first time, that he had something that worked. That was the winter the test arrived. December ran wrong. Not cold, warm. The temperature sat in the high 40s through Christmas and into January, the air carrying a green smell it had no business carrying in midwinter. He felt it before he understood it, walking the pastures at dawn, the cattle moving too loosely, too comfortably, their winter coat not quite heavy enough for the season. He stopped in the middle of the south field. His crossbred heifers, the two he'd kept as replacements, both from Odie's first and second calf crops, were in heavier condition than he'd planned for this time of year. He'd been proud of that. Better going in condition meant better rebreeding rates. He'd built the mineral program specifically to hold that condition through winter. But heavier condition in wrong temperatures meant higher maintenance demands. Bigger animals burning more energy in a season that was supposed to be biologically quiet. And when the warmth ended, and it would end suddenly, the way these warm spells always ended, the correction would be severe. He sat on the fence rail with the notebook. He wrote, "Heterosis improves genetic potential. It does not insulate the animal from environmental stress. I have been thinking about the genetics as a complete solution. They are only one variable. I was only half right. The other half is harder." The front came down out of the north on a Thursday in late January. 38 degrees at noon. 11 degrees by midnight. Holding there for 4 days. He lost 2 calves. Not from cold alone, from the combination of early woken metabolisms and inadequate shelter in the nights that dropped below zero. His crossbred heifer from Odie's second calf crop delivered a weak calf that needed 3 days of bottle feeding before it stood on its own. He was 15 years old, out at 2 in the morning in temperatures that stopped his hands from working properly, feeding a calf by bottle in the dark barn, while his breath made small clouds in the light. His mother came out and told him to come inside. "Mama," he said, looking at her over the calf's head. "Daddy lost calves in hard winters too. He didn't know why. I know why. I can fix the why. But I have to finish figuring out the fix first." She put her hand on his shoulder and went back inside. He stayed with the calf. Gene Sims slowed his truck on the county road in February and watched Darius stringing a windbreak along the north face of the south pasture, alone, in wind that cut sideways. "Lost some, did you?" Sims called. "2 calves. Cold and poor shelter. That'll happen. That's just winter farming." "I know why it happened," Darius said. "I'm fixing it." Sims looked at the windbreak, at the boy's white hands, at the whole project. "Your daddy ran this place 12 years and never did come out ahead on it," he said. "You can't outwork the land." "I'm not trying to outwork it," Darius said. "I'm trying to understand it." Sims put the truck in gear. That night, hands too stiff to hold a pencil properly, Darius sat at the kitchen table and let himself think the thing he hadn't said out loud. Maybe they were right. Maybe a boy his age had no business betting his dead father's cattle on a letter and a hunch. Maybe Hatcher and Sims and every man at Hollis's diner had seen something true that he was too young and too stubborn to see. He sat with that for a long while. Then he thought about the data table in the notebook. 18 months of numbers, all going in one direction. He hadn't imagined that. The scene was real, even if the saving wasn't finished. He went to bed. He got up before light. He went back out to the cattle. He rebuilt the mineral program from the ground up. He leased the neighboring field for hay to fund it. He redesigned his heifer selection criteria, moderate mature size, cold adapted, without surrendering the growth rate gains the AI program had been producing. He added shelter infrastructure. He added a cold monitoring protocol. He wrote at the end of that season's notebook, "I was right about the problem and only half right about the solution." Being half right in farming is its own kind of wrong. The land doesn't grade on a curve. The first answer got me far enough to see how far I still had to go. That might be the most important thing I've learned. The county was laughing slightly differently now, with the edge that comes when someone refuses to fail on the schedule you'd assigned them. He kept going. Success in cattle farming is not a moment. It arrives the way dawn arrives on flat ground, gradually, until you realize it has been light for a while and you cannot name the exact second it stopped being dark. By his 5th year, Darius was running 9 cows on a documented AI selection protocol, averaging 162 pounds above county weaning weight, 0 cold weather calf losses since the February he built the windbreak. Howard Cole put the Elmore name on his source documentation. A college extension newsletter mentioned a 12-acre operation in Calhoun County, named only by county and acreage, that had cut calf weight variance by 40% and increased weaning averages by over 150 pounds through systematic AI selection and documented nutritional management. Everybody in the eastern part of the county knew what place it meant. Nobody said so out loud. Roy Hatcher drove up the driveway in April of Darius's 5th year. Not to the fence line. Up the driveway. He parked and came out with his hat in his hands. "Darius," he said. First time he'd used the name. "Mr. Hatcher." Hatcher looked at the pasture. At the cattle. At the evenness of the pen, the consistency that tells a man who knows cattle he is looking at a system, not luck. "I've been watching your weaning weights through the Talladega contacts," he said. "My average hasn't moved in 8 years. I'm still on the county bull." He looked at his hat. "I'd like to understand what you did." The afternoon light came through the barn door at the flat angle it carries in Alabama in spring, pale gold, the light of something ending and beginning at the same time. Darius went inside and came back with the first notebook. The original. Soft-covered, worn to the shape of him. The handwriting of a 12-year-old boy on the first page. "It starts here," he said. "I noticed the calves weren't improving and wrote it down. Then I tried to understand why. Then I wrote to someone who knew more than me. Then I did what she said, noticed what worked and what didn't, and wrote that down too. The genetics are one piece. The management system they live inside is the other. I didn't understand that at first. The hard winter taught me." Hatcher put on his reading glasses. He looked at the data table. 6 columns, 18 months, the question marks Darius's father had left behind 12 years earlier that his son had carried forward. He took out a pen. "Tell me from the beginning," he said. 3 hours. 7 pages of notes. When he left he said, "Your father was a good man." "Yes, sir." "You're a different kind of thing." Darius watched the truck until it turned onto the county road, then wrote it down. R. Hatcher came to learn. Hat in hand. 3 hours. 7 pages. That's not vindication. Vindication is 5 years of calves coming off even and heavy. That was the evidence. He just finally read it. The county's transformation was quiet, the way the most important changes always are. Not in meeting rooms, but in what men do when they think nobody's watching. The shared county bull retired operation by operation. Breeding catalogs appeared at the feed store. Tom Birdsell wrote an extension bulletin about heterosis in commercial beef programs. He did not name the Elmore place. He did not need to. The county spent 2 years laughing at a 13-year-old boy. It spent the next decade quietly becoming what he already was. Darius farmed the Elmore place the rest of his working life. His mother Elaine kept the original notebooks on the shelf where she could see them from the kitchen. When visitors came, and visitors came, because the Elmore place had a reputation, she'd take out the first one. "The most valuable thing on this farm," she'd say. They always looked surprised. "Not because every decision in here is right. Half of them are wrong." 2 calves lost before he understood the shelter problem. A whole season that was only half a solution. "It's all here." She set it on the table. "What makes it worth keeping is that not one wrong decision stands alone. Every wrong decision has a correction under it, and a date. So you can see exactly how long it took to get from wrong to right." She closed the notebook. He never tore out the pages where he was wrong. That's the only reason he ever learned to be right. Somewhere in this county, or the one next to it, there is probably a person everyone has already written off. Too young. Too quiet. Too far outside the room where decisions get made. They are probably watching something. They are probably writing it down. Darius Elmore was not smarter than the men who laughed at him. He had one thing they didn't. He was willing to look at the problem honestly, even when the answer made him look foolish, even when the whole county had decided that a boy like him couldn't possibly be the one who figured it out. The real victory was not proving others wrong. The real victory was proving himself right, in the face of a judgment made before he ever walked through the door, built on his age, his race, and the county's certainty about which kind of person was allowed to understand something. And then having the discipline to keep proving it. Year after year. Breeding season after breeding season. Notebook after notebook. Until the evidence became undeniable. Until the men who laughed the loudest drove up the driveway with their hats in their hands.